conversation. Welcome back if you've been here before. And if you're new here, you've found a place of support, kindness, caring, and candid conversation. Here's a list of the videos for December. Lies and manipulation, all or nothing, triggers, and growing old in sobriety. Hi, welcome. I'm Anita Lee, and this is my monthly live stream, and I'm glad you could join me. And today I have a special guest, and that is my sponsor, and her name is Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Thanks
Hello,
for joining me.
Good morning.
So you saw the list of the videos for the month, and typically what I intend to do is kind of recap the topics and talk about them. So today I have a couple of questions for you, and I think that'll start off our conversation. The way I'll do it today is a little different. We'll have a little conversation and talk about some things, and then I'll check the comments, and we'll end with answering questions and going over the comments if there are any. So it's good to see you. I just smile every time I look at that frame on my computer.
Same here.
Oh, there she is. We haven't seen each other for over a year, maybe 2 years now. So this is wonderful. And I thank you. Thank you for being here and being gracious enough to come spend some time with me. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it too.
Okay, so first thing I want to ask you, okay, I tried something new, which was a monthly topic, and this month was alcoholic behaviors. And I quickly came to know that is not going to work for me. I am a little more, I should say a little less structured than that. But for this month, we're going to stay on topic, and I'm going to ask you some questions with regards to alcoholic behaviors. First question I have is, would you consider that alcoholic behavior is different from non-alcoholic behavior?
Well, I don't have anything to compare it to since I've been an alcoholic since I was, alcoholic behaviors happened long before I picked up a drink. But I think that how I could probably compare behaviors, I think that most people have some sort of an addiction. There are very few people I've encountered that don't have some kind of, or a malady that gets in the way of them and serenity. I knew early on. In retrospect, I can talk about it, but I think that when I think back about how my addictive behaviors began, with overachievement, with wanting people to think that I was, more than I thought I was. And then I found boys, and then I found diet pills, and then I found many other drugs, and it goes on infinite, and the word I want.
Infinitely.
Infinitum. I was going to try and speak Latin, but the aging process has taken all my Latin away.
Yeah, and I never had it, so.
No, I'm kidding. I'm joking, but I think that for me, it's really when I spy, or I think that I notice somebody's addictive or the alcoholic ism behaviors in somebody else, I try really hard not to be judgmental, because I think that everybody's got an Achilles heel and everybody's got something that they depend on to take them out of their feelings or to redirect any sadness or discomfort. But I know that I'm addicted to everything and I put it all in one box. And I know that if I feel uncomfortable and I can't see what part I am, what my part is, because that's the healthy way for me to find serenity is just see my part and let it go or make amends or whatever. But generally, if I'm feeling uncomfortable or have some sort of disdain going on with me, I know that if I choose something outside of me to make me feel good inside, that I'm on the train, and that means that there isn't going to be enough.
Yeah.
I've got dogs barking in the background. I just know that I think that I cannot really understand a brain that isn't alcoholic because I've only had that brain. And when I see other people, trying to get more money, I learned a long time ago that trying to have more money is kind of demeaning, and trying to find salvation is very selfish. If I stay present and I be authentic, then I can stay out of my addictions. And it's not always, but it's the quickest way because I'm hedonistic. I like feeling good, and I can't pretend to feel good anymore like I did all my life.
Yes.
I want to really feel good, and so I go from point A to point B as quickly as I can, and that's to just reach some connection with my higher power, see my part, and try not to judge other people's behaviors.
Right.
So that's ideal. I'm not saying I can do it all the time, but that's what I reach for.
It's good to have a point to head toward, to have a goal, as I call it. When I know for sure the type of person I want to be, that's my goal. And so I'm always striving to head in that direction, as you said. And to that end, I came up with that question because I started thinking about all the people I know who aren't alcoholics who seem to share the same fears and things that drove me to drink, you know. So that's why I questioned whether there's real validity in the term or phrase alcoholic behavior, because I think it's just human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, everyone has something. And I always tell a friend of mine, everybody's got their own shit. And so um, that's what I keep in mind when I come across people whose behavior I either don't understand or don't condone or think should be different. I remember that I don't know their whole story. And so I don't know what's making them behave in the way that they're behaving. And so um, something like triggers, which I never even heard of until I went to treatment, you know, to rehab. And now I recognize people's triggers probably before they do, you know. And I did the trigger video because I was asked by a friend, how do I identify triggers in my loved one? And for months I thought about it and I couldn't come up with an answer. Do you have a suggestion for how to identify triggers in someone, or
In my loved one?
in a loved one, not in yourself? I think looking for them in a loved one helps you to identify them in yourself as well. But like I said,
Well,
my question was about a loved one.
David and I have done extensive work about family of origin triggers. You know, when David and I got together, and I say this because the work that we've done apart from our personal program is in a recovering program called Recovering Couples. And when I lived by myself and I was in recovery, I was perfect. And I really think this was true. I really believed that I could shut the door to the world. I didn't have to contest anything. I didn't have to argue with anybody. I made my own decisions. My behaviors weren't affecting anybody else.
Right.
But then I chose to be in a relationship with my partner, and I realized very painfully the work I had to do. And when you brought up the topic triggers, that's a huge barrier to intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a family member, that being able to expose my soft underbelly to be authentic
Mm-hmm.
without fear or without my triggers keeping me from being that way and recognizing them. I think that for me, the awareness that I have, obviously, like you asked, the awarenesses I have with David's triggers has to do with me recognizing my own,
Mm-hmm.
because we can trigger each other. And, he can be empathetic of my triggers and be kind, and vice versa. But if we're both triggered at the same time, it's called a fight.
Yeah.
And the willingness and the open-mindedness to have true intimacy really comes from this desire I have just to grow, just to open my mind up, because you talked earlier this month about aging.
Mm-hmm.
And I am, the only thing that I really can control is my open-heartedness or my open mind. That's the only thing I really can control, what I put in my mouth and what comes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that because I'm aging and my mind doesn't work like it used to, I don't necessarily have to increase my intellect or my memory, but I certainly can increase my spirituality. And letting things go when I see that I might be getting triggered. I am responsible for my triggers. David isn't responsible for my triggers. And depending on my partner or anybody in my life to take care of me is futile. They got their own shit. So I really need to really have the clarity to recognize, like for instance, when I speak to David or even girlfriends, I preface, I hope that you don't take this personally, or I hope this doesn't upset you, and say whatever I need to say so that people are aware that they need to kind of look to see that my intention isn't to upset them. And when somebody's triggered, it's like this, look out, because
They no longer hear you.
Yeah, they're in
For
defense
one
mode.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because
yeah,
as soon as you go into defense, your hearing gets impaired.
right.
And
Did
so,
I answer you? Did I answer your question? Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah, you did. And I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No.
Um,
I could
but,
go on forever about the topic, but I need to pull myself back.
well, yeah, it's good. So basically, your answer was, in order to recognize another's triggers, you need to recognize triggers within yourself. And sometimes one helps the other, correct?
Well, yeah, it helps, but I think that when you have somebody else on the same page as you, that you're both willing to look at what that monster is.
Well,
I can't, somebody who's not in recovery would probably just think, oh, let it go. But for me,
yeah, and that's what I was going to say
the
is
trigger. I'm
you
holding on.
have the benefit of someone who is on the same page with you. Many of us don't. Many of
Right.
us kind of reside in the world of recovery simultaneously as the world of none or the others,
Mhm.
and so I think your partnership is unique, at least to me, in that you both seem to have your eyes on the same prize, you know?
Yes.
And so, um, again, I interrupted you and I apologize.
Well, I just want to reiterate that, I have a I don't want to say a character defect, but I have an ism that I just assume people think like I do. And,
Mhm.
I'm constantly reminded they don't. But
Yeah.
that doesn't keep me from thinking, well, you understand what I'm saying
Well,
because blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. And they
Yeah.
go, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? And it's usually people who are not in recovery because the
Yeah.
12-step program just opens your mind up to so many tools.
That's that's what earlier um I think in November I shared my first video in November was I shared the 12 steps of AA. And I got some comments from friends that they really loved them and they were going to find a way to apply a lot of it to their lives. And it was then that I think I had to become conscious of the truth that not everyone knows what we know. And it reminded me that when I first went into recovery, all I kept saying was, "Why isn't everyone learning this? Why why is this just for us? The
Yeah.
world needs to know that there's an alternative way to function in the world." And so
That's why that grateful alcoholic sounds so weird to some people. How can you be
yes,
grateful that you're an alcoholic? Because I have
yes,
recovery.
exactly, because I found my way through. Yeah. And in doing that, like I speak a lot of the clarity that came with being sober, becoming sober.
Right.
And I speak so highly of the clarity because without it, I wouldn't have found any of the other, you know, without the awareness and the clarity, um, I'd be that confused person you mentioned, like, what are you talking about? What it's not really that big a deal. And it is a huge deal because it's life, you know, and it's how we choose to cope with life as it comes at us because it's not going to stop coming. When it stops, then other things are going to have stopped by then too.
You
Like the
know,
breathing.
there's so many. I think that one of the gratitudes or the gratitude that I have about sobriety is that I I'm moving forward. I'm always moving forward, even when I have something that I might deem um, bad in my some fear or whatever. I
Mhm.
know that there's nothing really intrinsically good or bad. That everything is either a lesson or a pleasure. I can't. I don't let things that happen to me in my life define me, and I would before. I would probably fall down a hole and decide that this is who I am and there's no changing me, which
Oh,
is the way I came into sobriety. One of the facilitators in a class I was in said, this is your chance to change.
mhm,
And I thought I was stuck with the personality I had.
mhm.
Not that I really ever thought about having a choice, but when I realized that I actually could write my own story and I could live my own story was so delightful. And I know that when I impose my will on others, I'm cheating myself out of the experience of living in the present time. And
And
so
cheating
that's
them.
why being present is my big. If I could define who I am and my desires, it would be to live in the present, because everything else is just life. So,
Yeah. Everything else is made up. there's nothing real except for now. The past is a thought and the future is a thought.
Right. And
Yeah.
you and I have only got this minute together, and that's all we have.
And it's, yeah, I'm embracing it. And
Well,
I
that's
love
why
it.
when you and I started working together years ago,
Uh-huh.
we didn't even remember the things we talked about because we were so enmeshed and involved in just our souls connecting.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I knew I just felt great afterwards, and I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned you in a few videos, and um one of them is me recalling you telling me that I was lying when I said I didn't love myself. And I just, it just makes me feel good to remember that. But in the video, I'm like, she didn't even miss a beat. She just told me that's a lie because you wouldn't be here sober if you didn't love yourself. And so I, yeah, that girl who you told that to, she's um gone now. She doesn't exist. But the memory of the truth being put in front of me like that, to me, it will remain as long as I can remember, you know.
And I'm
So
so
thank
glad.
you.
Well, we all struggle with an opinion of ourselves,
Well, yeah,
Oh, I
but
could have done that better, or, why did I say that? Or, gee, I should do this, or gee, I should do that. I mean, we all have that.
well,
But
yeah, and that to me is the seed of the fear that we live in, you know. It's the idea that we should be better or we should be different, you know. And I don't know, recently I've come into this place where I don't feel that anymore. And it's amazing. I don't even know how I functioned under the fears that I carried around for so many years.
well, it was
And so
exhausting, wasn't it?
it was. I'm
I
still
know.
tired from it.
I
It's
know.
like,
Just trying to hold up a house of cards.
yes, and constantly kicking it. You know, it was that sort of deal. And
Yeah.
so, I have another question for you, if I may. Um,
You may.
first, first of all, I have to say I am thoroughly enjoying this. Thank you again. And the question is, which behaviors do you still have that you identify as alcoholic, or do you have any?
Identify it. I think that the acceptance I have that I have the ism,
Hmm.
um, I I don't think that any of those behaviors in my head have ever gone away. I just don't act on them.
Okay.
I
So
will.
yeah, when I say, I think behaviors lie dormant, they don't go away. And so when I say which do you have, I
That
mean
I act on.
which do you exhibit?
Um, well, I think that I can easily judge somebody else by something that I've received from them. Something. I can find a little tiny respite in feeling superior for a second when I judge somebody's behavior.
Yeah.
And when I the thing is that the yin and yang of it is that I can exhibit alcoholic behavior, but I also am aware of the remedy, the tool opposite that behavior. That my control issues come from insecurity. My judgment comes from insecurity, fears. So, you know, I I don't want to live in the delusion that I don't act like an alcoholic anymore because I'd be lost if I thought that. But I don't think that I live very many moments during the day with regret that I've acted out or that I've said something that needs me that I need to apologize for. I don't
Yes.
do that anymore. And then I talked to you early on in sobriety about touching the hot stove.
Yes.
I actually don't have, I know that if I touch that hot stove, it's going to burn me. So I just don't do it anymore. I have setbacks. I can get pissed off really easily about something if I'm triggered, but I can reel myself back in before I make any damage or do any damage. So my alcoholic behaviors might be that, I got up from the couch the other night, watching a movie, and I went to the toffee that I made for Christmas. And I think I had 6 pieces.
Hmm.
Now, if that isn't addictive, I don't know what is. But it, but I didn't have to do an amends to anybody. I just changed the behavior. I
Yeah.
will always be an addict in some way. I managed to lose 10 pounds during COVID because it was the only thing I knew I could control.
Uh,
I did. I feel so accomplished, and so when I go off the rails and have 6 pieces of English toffee, I don't hold on to any regret for very long.
well,
It's just
yeah.
something, it's just something I wanted to do. But it's addictive behavior. Most normal people would have 1 piece and say that's fine. But
Yeah, I don't know those
six
people.
was better.
If one is good, more must be
I,
better.
I felt good about myself that it wasn't 7.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's
But
kind of,
that is ism. That is if it tastes and feels good, let's have more.
yeah. And I for me that story is very common. I can't say it happens just once and then, you know, that's that's it. But what helps me to keep going is to realize I'm human and my behavior is only that. It's just a behavior. And that means it can be changed, you know? And so I don't freak out anymore when I do something that is becoming of someone I don't want to be, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I
Mm-hmm.
just go, okay, I see that now.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do about it? Am I going to do anything about it? And it's awesome just knowing I have the choice because there was a time when I didn't think I had a choice. As you mentioned earlier, I thought my behavior meant I was that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there's nothing more liberating than realizing that I can and I do create my own story, that I pick the path that I'm chucking along on. And most of the, there when I pick my path, then there are consequences or things that happen that make me have to pick something else. Like it's a continual puzzle or journey, um, that as long as I keep that in mind, that it's continual, I don't freak out anymore. I don't even have the question of why me or when is it going to get better because this you know this is the better. This is the better. I remember I paused because years ago I remember speaking with a friend and we were talking, of course, probably about the gloom and the negativity, but um, they posed that same question: when is my life going to get better? And I said, what if this is your better? You know, you're missing out. What if this is it? Grab that thing, have some fun. And so after that conversation, it really became prominent in my mind that now is it, you know, that it made it easier for me to embrace whatever comes. and all sorts of stuff comes, you know. It's not all good, it's not all bad. And I've really worked hard to even eliminate the labels of good and bad, because they're what is the word I'm looking for? They're based on your perspective and your beliefs. And
Right.
and
Well,
if
one, I think that if you don't mind me interrupting you,
no.
I think that, the alcoholic brain that I'm aware of is that I have a brain that lies to me.
Mhm.
And I know that if I find if I'm at effect, something negative, my brain will tell me I need to do something to anesthetize.
Mhm.
Now, this isn't intellectual that I'm talking about. This is
Right.
something that's so down deep inside of my early recovery. And I do believe that because because of the way my brain works, I think that I became sober. It was so easy for me to not drink because the desire was lifted from me. So
Mhm.
I was able to do a lot of things that didn't require my intellect. I didn't have to fight my brain telling me something because I was enjoying so much not wanting to drink. But later on, I realized that I like early on, I had an affair. Well, within the first 3 years, I had an affair with somebody who wasn't available, which is what I did all my life.
Mhm.
But I saw it as a high. So
Mhm.
there I went, oh, I'm addicted to that too. This feels good having sex. This feels really good with no regard for how it was affecting anybody.
Mhm.
And then I become aware of that. And then I move into another where I had like, extreme food issues, where I was going to, it just always was like going like this in every direction. And I realized, oh, it's all one thing.
Yeah.
And that was not an intellectual thing. What it
Mhm.
was I saw that I cannot respond to the outside world and allow myself to have to anesthetize behind what I'm experiencing. And that I'm not going to reach out for things to change the way I feel. It's an inside job. And I'm, it's cliche when they say that Alcoholics Anonymous is an inside job. But
Mhm.
if you're not aware, you're not aware.
Exactly.
And
And you
you
can only become aware from the inside.
and it's such an elusive thing that as soon as we recognize it, we've lost it. So living in the present and being the best organic, being the most authentic I can be moment to moment is just all I have.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff is just extraneous bullshit.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
just
can say this out loud and think it's intellectual, but really it's trying to put words to something I have no words for.
exactly. And I find that a lot in even trying to convey stories and videos, is there are some things that we haven't been able to give words to. And we try, and sometimes we confuse the situation by using the words we know. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree that the the experience of getting to know yourself to the extent that you're comfortable with yourself and you like yourself, and um, you recognize your behaviors and your ability to um, change them, is not something that someone can tell you how, what that process is, because it's going to be different depending on your choices and who you are and what you believe.
But the
And
people in recovery will nod and say they know exactly what you mean.
well, yeah, and that's what I mean, because they found it within themselves.
Mhm.
So, I'm not saying no one can recognize it. I'm saying it's hard to convey in a sentence. It's like, oh, here's a piece. Now you figure out where that piece goes. Now here's another piece. Now I'm not going to tell you where it goes. You got to figure that out, And that's kind of how my experience was in finding that I could be joyful in sobriety. I,
Mhm.
I I was like you in that the desire to drink was taken from me immediately. So that wasn't ever something I had to struggle with, you know.
Mhm.
But I did have to struggle with me. Like, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I get to be that person? Oh no, there's an obstacle. What do I do now? I can go back to my crutch or one of my newer surfaced addictions and just act like it's not there, or I could face it and see what happens. Let's see what happens. That's what I love. It's like,
And that's the actual hook for me, is that I am excited to see what every day brings.
yeah,
I'm truly excited. I know people who wish they could know the future, and it would limit my present time if I knew the future.
well, yeah, and there are people who think they know the future. That's even worse. In
And
my
then they tell you
experience.
about it, and then
In my experience, just
and then
having
you have to
someone
go
tell
like
me
this.
what's gonna happen is like, oh my gosh, you don't know. There's no way you can know. And yeah, that's very present in my world
And
where I
that's our
just
humor, Anita. You and
yeah,
I laugh about that.
I
You know,
guess.
it's it's a lovely mystery, and I'm forever thankful and grateful to be in recovery, and to know that, I go down a little dark hole sometimes because I struggle with my memory,
Hmm.
and it's like I can't count on my brain to give me what I could always pull up before, and
Yeah.
and it's not it's really not about my ego anymore. What it is that I am projecting the future that my brain is going,
Hmm.
and it makes me sad.
Yeah.
you know i I know that I have no control over it, but I can't help but think that, there's so many times that I have said something and I told myself, why didn't you just think that through? That, think
Oh
things
yeah.
through, because you made a statement that's really idiotic. And I
I'm
think,
always going back.
and I go, I know better. Believe me, let me tell you again.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that I can laugh about it because I don't know that a week passes where I don't have to backtrack and go, "Oh, my bad. Sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I thought it through and I was absolutely incorrect." You
And I
know?
really know better, honest.
And I don't know that I know better at the time. I think when it happens, I don't know better. But when I give myself time to think about it, then I've learned better.
Yeah.
And so I I I have embraced the idea or the fact that I'm going to have to own my shit. You know, that
Well, no, I want to reiterate there, the things that I regret are things that are factual, not my perception or my that I'm interjecting my opinion on somebody. I'm talking about things like, did do we give the dog two pills a day or one? And my daughter says one, and I said, well, I knew that.
oh,
That
yeah.
kind of thing, because
Okay.
it's all just about, it's more about my recollection as opposed to an opinion. I mean, I
Mhm,
feel really wholehearted about how I share my love and that sort,
mhm.
and I have no regrets around that. It's the particulars where
Yeah.
people look at me and go, you're asking me that, don't you know? And I go, oh, yeah, 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 I know.
Yeah.
So it's a little, sometimes I think that when I have the baby, I think, uh, you know, uh, um, when I take care of my grandson, I wonder sometimes, am I not going to be safe for him because I've forgotten something,
Well, then you're not being present. because
Well, yeah,
now
but
then you're projecting to the future and
yeah,
missing
but I
out
also
on the
have to
past.
own something so that he's safe.
Yeah.
I
I
have to
think I
own.
think the awareness in itself that it's a possibility is all that's necessary at this time. And then the
Well,
worry, but I don't know because I'm not in your situation, but that is what I would um gather from what you just said.
well, I'm around. Everybody else I'm around can take care of themselves. He's the only one that can't. So
Yeah.
I'm the one that's on the chopping block if something happens. I mean, I'll tell you, I lost him once. Katie was working in the office,
Yeah.
and I turned around and he was gone.
Yeah.
And I had all the doors to the hall in the living room was safe. I had everything cordoned off, and he had a gate up. The sliding door was open. The
Yeah.
screen door was open.
Yeah.
I went running outside looking for him. And we're talking a minute's only gone by, and I'm so worried my daughter's going to come out of the office and find out I lost her son.
Yeah.
He was like 13 months old or 14 months old, and walking and getting into everything. And the house had settled in such a way that the door to where he sleeps wouldn't shut all the way. He had pushed it open and shut it behind him, and he was in there playing. And I was just, all I could think of was I was just so glad my daughter didn't catch me losing her son.
I had a similar situation many years ago, actually when I was still drinking. And I had a nephew. I had my nephews and niece with me over the summer, and I had my 2-year-old nephew with me in the BART station because we had dropped someone off. And I turned around and he was gone. And I,
Oh
oh,
my God.
your face right there says you understand the panic I went into. And there was a gentleman passing, and he goes, "Are you looking for your twin? He's right there." And it was all okay, but the panic and fear that went into my body, my soul at that moment when as soon as he's out of my vision, I'm doomed.
Yeah.
And so
Scary,
I
scary stuff.
yeah, I understand that completely. And so I don't even know if we touched on all the different topics of the videos. I think we did. We did the aging and the triggers, and oh, we didn't talk about all or nothing and lies and manipulation. Do you have any comments you'd like to share on those two topics, or are you done?
Lies and manipulation. The work that I've done about family of origin characteristics of me, my family of origin characteristics, the things that we learned early on that crying and throwing a fit as a child would sometimes get your way. I never used that kind of tactic, but I did use withdrawal and silent treatment to get what I wanted. Recognizing the things that I learned that worked as a youngster, I found that I carried them on in my adulthood. But it's amazing to me that doing the recovery work and identifying those behaviors, once I identify them, it's rare that I would ever want to use them because I'm aware.
Right.
So,
and you told me at one time as well, yeah, you did that when you were growing up, but you don't need to anymore. Like, you're safe now and you don't need to have that behavior to protect yourself or whatever reason I was doing something. But go ahead.
But I think that the key for my serenity is that I accept and look at my behaviors and that I'm not always in control of how I respond to things, but I do know that I don't have to act out covertly what I need to achieve. I can ask for what I want, I feel safe that I can ask my partner and my sister and my daughter what I want from them. It's their
Mhm.
choice to say yes or no. So I don't really need to use the covert behaviors in order to achieve what I want. I I'm not, I don't always ask right away for what I want, but if I feel uncomfortable and feel that somehow I've not set a boundary, I've done work in codependency. I do work in, adult children of alcoholics, that sometimes you just learn to um, not ask for what you want because you don't know if you're safe,
Exactly.
but all this is just a continual thing where I just have to be willing to be aware.
Yes.
And
And I use
I appreciate so much you just asking me to be on this podcast because I have been down a rabbit hole since COVID. I do not go out with my girlfriends anymore. I do not do any of that stuff because I have a baby in my life that has to be safe.
Mhm.
And I needed this so much. I
Good.
can't tell you
Good.
how I feel so full inside.
Good. I
Uh,
I needed this too, and it's just worked out the way it's supposed to. Um,
was there
I
another question? Did
no,
you want to get the another topic in
the
before we
all or nothing.
all or nothing? And in what respect, hun? I mean, how? Give me
Just
reiterate.
for me, I found that that was a hard one for me to face and to um, actually acknowledge was real in my life, where um, I would want to do something and say we were going to do this interview or this talk, and you were able to give me 30 minutes instead of an hour. I would, there was a time when I would think, well, then it can't happen because I have it set in my mind. It's going to be all. And if it can't be all, then it has to be nothing. And so that is just the most recent example I can think of. But there are so many other things, like the toffee, eating the toffee in my house. If there was toffee left, it might not survive because I have to eat all of it, or I shouldn't touch it at all. You
Uh-huh.
know, it was
Right.
an all or nothing. And especially with food, I found that it's been very helpful to let go of my all or nothing tendencies, because then I can eat part of what's on my plate if I'm full. I don't
Mhm.
have to eat it all, which was something I think um, us in of a certain age remember being told to eat all your food. And I don't know if that still happens. It might. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't live in that young world anymore.
But
But
I think that recognizing that that is a true ism, and that is a family of origin thing. If
yeah,
you didn't know if you were going to get your next meal, or you
right.
did, or somebody who you loved and revered told you to feel shame if you don't finish your meal.
Hmm.
Those are huge messages that we carry.
Well,
You know.
yeah, and that's the kind of thing that gets it gets so in you. You learn it so young, and it becomes part of your process that you may not even recognize that it is something that can be changed. You might not, it might take a while to recognize that it's there. And so, how can you change it if you don't even know it's there? How can you approach it?
If you're not
So
aware.
that's why the awareness is the first thing that needs to happen. And then from there, it kind of grows. You
Well,
can't unknow something.
there's something that I share with other sponsees, and one is that my behaviors and the things that I did to survive prior to recovery,
Mhm.
the reason that I don't have huge remorse and carry the things that I deemed horrible with me, the shame, remorse, the guilt, and all that, I didn't know any better.
Mhm.
But once I knew I'm totally responsible.
Yeah.
So I cannot delude myself that it's okay for me to act and behave in a way that I don't admire.
Mhm.
So when I do, I got to go through this thing about ego and, my people's perception of me and all that stuff. But when you mentioned earlier in one of your podcasts that you don't care what people think of you anymore, but it's amazing when I don't act the way that I believe I should, everybody's opinion matters.
Yes. Yes, because
So,
well,
so
that's what I was trying to instill in my niece was if you are true to yourself, if you know, then you can't easily be shaken. And not just in her, but in many people that I speak to. I believe that the reason I can say I don't care, because of course I care, I the implications of that phrase are tremendous. And to each person,
because you care,
yeah,
and I totally get that, hun.
yes,
I think that having humility, the definition of humility to me is having indifference to oneself.
yeah,
If you take care of who you are and are authentic, you can forget about yourself. You
yes.
don't have
That's
to,
one less problem,
yeah.
one
Well,
less concern.
and you are comfortable in your own skin. There's no
Yeah,
need to fix something that's just the way it's supposed to be.
exactly. I just love that because as much as there are things I'd like to change about me, I don't feel like it's the end of the world if they don't change. Like it, my reasons for wanting the change are because I want it now, not because someone said it should be a certain way, or
Mhm.
maybe it is, maybe deep down that's still driving it, but it doesn't feel like it to me. It's just
Well,
I want to change something about me. It's kind of like that goal that I mentioned earlier. If you set your eye on that goal, that's just your goal. It's not I want to look the way Valerie thinks I should look. I want to look the way Anita thinks I should look, you know.
well, I think that with maturity, which I think we acquire when we get sober because we didn't have it before.
Yeah.
I think that you start realizing that there's certain times when you have to stop dissecting things.
Hmm.
It's just, to go down that rabbit hole of intellect is just, it doesn't behoove me, and it's counterintuitive to being present.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just,
it's exhausting.
well, and it's another thing that just doesn't stop. you
Right.
know there's never enough money to get, there's never enough food to eat, there's never enough friends to have, there's never enough all this stuff that we
Yeah.
think is all static. It's never going to go with us, and it's it actually has, it's not my life that's important, it's my relationship to life.
Hmm.
So it's how I decide I'm going to look at and feel my experience. It isn't the life itself. It's just my relationship to it.
I see. And yeah, it's yeah. It that what you just said speaks so much to what I try to convey, which is you make the choices that create the quality of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't get to decide there's never going to be another problem, you
And we
know,
never thought we had
because
choices before.
right. And I think that's why it's so huge to me and why I constantly um try to share that because I think many of us go through life without the knowledge that we have much more choice than we've been taught that we do, you know. And so I want everyone to know that. I want everyone to know that you have choices, and it may seem like you don't because of your circumstances. That, but
I have somebody arriving.
okay,
She
but
was going to come at what time is it?
it is 11:55. We almost did
Yeah,
an
she
hour.
was supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. My darling, I'm sorry I have
Okay,
to
that's
run.
okay.
I,
Thank
I
you.
love you
I love you.
and thank you, sweetie. Do we
Thank
have
you. Well, I got a comment from Veronica that says, "Hello, Anita," and I'd like to say, "Hi, Ron. Hi,
okay,
Veronica."
I
And
gotta go, baby.
you go and take
Okay.
care of you, and I love you, and I'll see you
I
soon.
love you too, and thank you for this experience.
You're welcome. Well, that was my sponsor. That was Valerie, and it was my first time having someone on my live stream with me, and it was clearly a big difference because we went so much longer, because it's easier to go back and forth in conversation than to try and imagine someone's reaction. So that's it for this month. And I'm going to leave you with a little something. And I hope to see you next month. And thank you for your time. Bye bye. How'd it get so late so soon? Well, thrive as best as you can, and remember, everything is already okay. That wasn't supposed to happen.